Awesome. But yeah, so I guess to get us started a little bit, over the past year, search has changed a lot in many different ways that are easy to feel, but harder to explain. AI is playing a bigger role in how people are discovering businesses, whether it's local businesses, B2B, or e-commerce. There's a lot of change that's happening. It's changing how customers make their decisions, it's changing what visibility actually looks like. And, it's one of those things that we're going to have to figure out now going into 2026. And so today's conversation to kind of clear the air is not about just chasing tactics or hacks or reacting to every single new update that comes our way. If you guys are familiar with SEO, things change all the time. But it's about stepping back and understanding what's actually different, what signals matter when AI systems decide who to recommend, and what businesses should realistically focus on as we move forward this year and beyond. We're going to talk a lot about how discovery is evolving, how AI recommendations work, where teams and businesses brands may be struggling, and how to think about measurement and what defines success and what should you guys prioritize in this more fragmented kind of crazy world. But before we get started, I wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items. So as you guys have already seen, we've got the chat section. This is live. We can see your comments coming in. So we're going to answer your questions throughout the chat or throughout the discussion. We don't have a dedicated Q&A because we want the entire session to be sort of a Q&A. Vanessa, yes, the recording will be made available. You can access the recording. I want to say it takes like an hour for the platform to process the recording, but you can go back and watch this at any point. So if you have to dip out early, no worries. We've also got some related resources for you as well in our docs tab, which should be right next to the chat tab. One thing to take a note of is we do have an upcoming webinar in February with the Yelp team, and they're going to be giving us some insight as to how their platform works, how businesses could be using it better, how to use it the right way. Yelp is one of those things that can always be a little difficult to navigate. So if that's something that you're trying to figure out, if it's something you're struggling with, I'm going to be sitting down with Jim Chappelle from the Yelp team and to ask him all these questions and to hopefully provide some more clarity on what you guys can do when it comes to Yelp. We've also got our past webinars. We've got a really awesome guide called the Essential GEO Checklist, and a couple of blogs there. And then also be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got a ton of videos that we're posting all the time. We'll post highlights from this discussion, as well as follow us on LinkedIn. We post all of our blogs, all of our content up there every day. It's some really, really good stuff. We have a really awesome team that puts in a lot of effort to create truly helpful content. But with that being said, let's go ahead and introduce today's speakers. So joining us today is Ben Fisher, is the founder of Steady Demand, Greg Sterling, co-founder of Near Media, and Adam Dorfman, our AVP of product here at Birdeye. Welcome, guys. It's so great to have you. It's been a minute, I think, since we've all been together on a call. So I'm excited to see kind of where things go. But I think just to kind of get things started is I'd like to give an understanding of how you guys are looking at AI search today. How is it different from the traditional search that we've been used to, especially as SEOs? And as we go into 2026, what's your frame of mind when it comes to AI search? And Greg, if you want to kick us off, you can, and then we can kind of go down the line.
My frame of mind. Well, it's AI all the time. I think people are. AI is a disruptive force, obviously, but it's kind of paradoxical because it has changed the way Google thinks about search. It has changed the Google search UI. But in some ways things have not changed that much. Google is still driving the majority of your traffic, and there's a lot of SEO discussion around good SEO is the same. If you do good SEO, you'll be optimized for AI, and there's a debate about that. So in some ways the market is radically different, and in other ways, as a practical matter, it's not that different as in the past. I think So that's where my head is at. I tend to be, I am an AI proponent. I like AI. I use I'm a ChatGPT partisan versus Gemini. And I do think that the market is underestimating the impact of AI from a consumer behavior standpoint, partly because it's not measuring that influence on purchases and decision making, because it's harder to track. So that's sort of the short version of where I am. What is an SEO? Search engine optimization. People who help companies and businesses rank higher typically in Google, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
And what about you? What are your thoughts on the landscape right now?
So I mean, Greg is dead on all of this. AI search in general, I mean, at its core, still has Google search on the back end, right? That is true. It has always been true. It probably always will be true. But the only thing that's really, quote unquote, and I want to say in quotes, changed is that it's become more entity based versus just keyword based. It's more of a long tail conversational type of queries than anything else. This started back in 2013 with the rewrite of Hummingbird, and it has been kind of moving forward ever since with more semantic type of relevance. And here we are today. And when you're looking at ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, or Gemini, it's all still based on semantic type of relevance, really, at the end of the day. So the system is more focused on understanding who and what in a business and the relationships around that entity versus just matching a standard old text string. And that would be probably what I would say the biggest takeaway from this is today.
Yeah. Adam, from your perspective, because you've been in the SEO space for a long time, but you're also now on the Birdeye side where we're trying to figure out how to help businesses, tackle this and approach this in a better way. What are your thoughts on the current landscape and how maybe things have evolved and, where you think they're going?
Yeah, I don't have so much to add that Greg and Ben haven't mentioned already from a high level perspective. What I will say is that when speaking to our clients, the amount of interest in this, and I think the amount of attendees we have to this webinar speaks to that as well too, is very high, and as it should be. Things are changing very quickly. This is clearly incredibly important. So restructuring internally and trying to figure out how does this fit into all the existing initiatives that we have is extremely important. And it's good that people are placing that level of importance to it, regardless, as Greg said, whether or not we can actually see everything that AI search is doing today, because he's right. It's really hard to measure this at its entirety, what's actually happening.
Yeah. And it feels like things are changing all the time. I think something that may...
I want to add something. I want to add something just because I like to hear the sound of my own voice. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So there's a lot, there's a lot of discussion about like Gemini's got the momentum and Google's going to win now because they've got all the money and they've got the full AI tech stack and all these things. And there's speculation about can ChatGPT continue to raise billions and billions of dollars and blah, blah, blah. Regardless of whatever happens with Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, and so on, Google has committed to radical change in the interface and the way that it presents information, and that's something that marketers will need to contend with. AI overviews, AI mode, web guide, Gemini. They have sort of fragmented their own ecosystem, and they're trying to build something new that we still don't know what it looks like. But if you ignore ChatGPT, if you ignore all the others, you still have to deal with what Google is doing with AI overviews and pushing people into AI mode, and the way that the AI in those situations processes information and presents information and how that impacts traffic and brand awareness and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I think one of the things that may cause a lot of confusion for people are it feels like it's marketing. There's always new terms. There's AEO, GEO, SEO. How would you guys, and AIOs, is there a difference between AEO, GEO, and SEO? Or are these just fluff words that people are using to try to make it seem like something new and different? Because, we hear all this stuff, but then what you guys are saying too is like the fundamentals still are there. So how would you guys define this? How would you break this down?
I think we're all
XEO.
we're all laughing about that. We're all laughing about this, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, looking back at it historically, whenever there's a major change or a major update in Google previously, even today, actually, I have to say, somebody races out and says and throws a term on it, penguin, panda, whatever the case may be, right? There's this kind of update, we give it this name, and then the rest of the industry either goes along with it or they fight, right? And they say, no, it should be this, no, it should be that. So I think we're still in fight stage at this point, right? Even though, Justin, I'm sad to hear you say GEO at all. Bad, naughty, Justin. But seriously, it's like Geo's kind of on the cusp of winning, but not really, because GEO, it can be confused in so many different ways, right? But like, what are we optimizing for? The world or a geo? I don't know. No, but seriously, it's, I started out I called it answer engine optimization 3 years ago. Now I call it AI optimization, so I think it's up in the air. Is really, I guess, what it is. It hasn't landed yet. I want to hear Greg's thoughts on this for sure.
But what about Adam's thoughts?
I have thoughts. Greg, you go first.
All right, I'll go first. The real question here, below all the terminology, is: are there any meaningful differences between what we have known as search optimization and this new thing, whatever you want to call it? What are there differences, and what are those differences? And I think the answer is, there's a Venn diagram, right? I don't think it's a one-to-one match, but there's a Venn diagram, and it's a question of the degree of overlap. One thing that is different is that AI optimization, which is the term I tend to use, is calling on marketers to do a broader range of things in SEO, diversify beyond Google, connect social posts or social links to Google Business Profile, pay attention to other, things like, sometimes Reddit and, YouTube. It's opening the aperture. So if you focused exclusively on Google and Google Business Profile and sort of a narrower range of ranking signals, now it forces you to think much more broadly. And it also forces you to think, which is the way marketers have been going for the last 18 months, 24 months, to think much more about your brand trust, brand authority. Before it was like keyword stuffing in the business name and reviews and, things that were very super tactical. And you really have to think about brand in a broad way and what rolls up into that. And then think about the different citations and reviews, but reviews across a broader range of sites. Yelp is an important one. Your next webinar. Yelp has become an important site again for marketers because it gets cited by AI mode and it shows up in ChatGPT. Anyway, it's really widened the way that people have to think about local marketing, which is still probably SEO, good SEO, but it's you can't just myopically focus on Google anymore, as you might once have been able to do.
I think that's really well said. I'm just going to add a few things. I don't really think of things in terms of AIO, SEO. I kind of think of things in terms of search optimization now at this point. And now, well, I guess I always have. And now between local search versus organic search versus whatever, product optimization and so on. All of these things were kind of niches within this overall search thing. And for now, optimizing for these LLMs and these AI engines does have its own unique set of tactics that are working. I do expect to see some convergence, and you are absolutely right. I think there's so much slop being generated right now from all of these different sites. There's going to be this pulling back, and I think the EEAT sort of method of thinking about things, especially the authority part, the trustworthiness part that you had spoke about, is going to start influencing these results more, because at the moment, the content that these LLMs are pulling from is, mostly okay, but there's a lot of garbage in there as well too.
And what Adam and Greg are saying is so dead on. And I think a lot of us have been railing at this over the years. If you look back at the really great, and I want to say just great SEO companies that have been around for a very, very long time, they don't just focus on Google optimization. They don't just focus on, whatever, right? They look at the entire thing as a whole. They focus on conversions, not just keywords. And AI is just bringing this to the forefront. It's like, if you want to be a really great asset to your customer, you have to look at the entire picture. You have to look at the business. How is the business doing? What are the reviews about that business? How can the business improve? And then, of course, going all the way down the funnel to conversions. Of course, that's a little bit difficult with the AI over at the moment, but it's getting better. So yeah, just want to cap that off. I love it. Great discussion.
Yeah, it does feel like the SEO world and the just general digital marketing world are converging, where the things that you're seeing, it's becoming more like, how does the AI interpret your brand as a whole? And you have to, and Ben, you've said this before, it's about controlling your narrative and not just optimizing for one keyword and stuffing it in a blog. But it's, if you're finding yourself missing on a certain topic whenever you search ChatGPT for something related to your business, you know, it's not just something that you can plug into a blog and go. It's more of an overall marketing effort to get yourself positioned that way. It's like you said, and I keep going back to controlling your narrative, because that just makes so much sense to me when I think about it that way. You know, one of the things that we saw a lot of in 2025 was the term AI agents and the agentic experience. And to me, it felt like there was a lot of talk about agents, but we didn't quite see it yet. It felt like, if anything, there was a lot of experiments happening when it comes to agents and how, you know, how they could be used. But it's also starting to seem like maybe in 2026, we might see those experiments come to fruition. And like you were saying earlier, Greg, Google's starting to make a lot more radical changes. When it comes to the agentic side of it, you know, we've seen them recently come out with updates for their agentic commerce and the business agent. How does that change from maybe a traditional LLM search? How do you think agents will come into play over the course of this year?
I'll take a crack at that. This is a huge topic.
It's a lot. It's a big one, but yeah.
There's multiple levels here. This is a huge topic. There's a very technical dimension to this, which I'm not really equipped to speak to with any authority. There's a kind of consumer behavior dimension to this. You know, Google in the last week or week and a half announced a bunch of e-commerce updates. So they announced a new ad format for AI direct offers, I think they're calling it. They announced a new protocol. I think it's Universal, UCP Universal. Is it Universal Commerce Protocol? That's a kind of counter to OpenAI's agentic commerce protocol. So that and they're making a big push in e-commerce. They're gonna host their own checkout, so you can check out from within the Google shopping experience, which is something we've been trying to do for a long time. So for companies that sell products online, I think this is a much closer reality, and they have to get kind of they have to start understanding these different protocols. You know, Google Merchant Center is going to add new categories. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in e-commerce that people need to get up to speed on. Much of that is technical. In other areas, Google is trying to push so-called agentic commerce. They made an announcement about that with local. And what that amounts to right now is just, you know, surfacing restaurant restaurant reservation availability. So if you go into AI mode and you say, I need a reservation for Friday night, you know, for a, you know, Japanese restaurant, blah, 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 show me the availability, they'll show you based on their Reserve with Google, I think, partners, who's got time slots. And then you pick a time slot and you can complete a restaurant reservation. I think that that's the way it's going to show up for local in the near term, scheduling and booking primarily. But this is an enormous topic.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, people are talking about, you know, from start to finish, the agent is going to do all the research. I'm planning a trip to Spain. The agent's going to do all the research. It's going to book the plane tickets. It's going to book the hotels. And I think that that's very premature. You know, there's a discovery component and then there's a transaction component. Yes, affiliates are going to be relevant to this, I think. But I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves if we say, in 6 months or in 3 months, we're going to see the total funnel taken over by machines, and everything's going to be about data behind the scenes, and there's going to be little or no consumer involvement in the process. I think there are lots of changes coming. I think it's a complicated topic, but I don't think consumer behavior is going to change dramatically in the short term.
Yeah,
I just want to stop.
I was going to say, I have to agree with a lot of what Greg has said there. And, one of the agents, I guess you could call it, in GBP that I actually enjoy is the one where you can ask it to basically find, say, a plumber near me. And, you fill out a little quick form, and then the agent goes ahead, makes the call, basically asks the questions and gets those answers, and then goes ahead and gives that back to you. It doesn't actually book the appointment, which I think is great. But eventually I could see that coming with a connection easily into like Google Calendar or something of that nature. Am I going to do something like that today? Am I going to allow Google to actually make that purchase or do that calendar for me? No, I'm not. I'm not ready for it. I'm a marketer. I'm also very skeptical at this as well. But the agent, the generation which is coming, that's in their 20s right now, 15, whatever, they are going to be absolutely interested in this because it's a quicker way of getting things done. And so, again, I think agentic search, I don't think it's going to be a huge thing right now. It is something that's going to come, absolutely, and you got to get prepared for it. But I think the way you generally handle your marketing is going to prepare you for this.
Yeah.
Meaning that, what Google has recently stated, and I believe it's actually on the agentic page, is that if you want to optimize for agentic search, make sure that you clearly have your prices on your website. You have clear images on your website. You have your address. You have the information you should have on there anyway. And it should be structured very well from a technical standpoint. So that way their, agent browser or whatever they're using can actually read that data. And it kind of goes back to another thing, which is kind of agentic, and that is that you have the comment browser. So the browsers which can just automatically surf websites and gather all sorts of information for you. Same thing. If your website is in good order, then that information can be therefore read and translated.
I would. Oh, go ahead, Adam. If you're going to jump in.
I would agree with everything you're saying. I cannot wait until the day arrives when I do a decent amount of work travel, where I can just say, find a flight to LaGuardia that lands between this time and is under $500 on this date or whatever, and book it for me. I cannot wait for that. I think we're still a ways away from me trusting that I'm going to get to a business meeting in time and all of that. So I do think that's coming. I agree. It's not now. I think where we're going to see agentic search show up, though, is going to be in a more app-specific manner. So as an example, I could see agentic search becoming more prominent in like an Instacart sort of experience, where you could just say, I need these 3 products sent to me, like I'm out of this, and just add it, like whatever. Like I can see it starting to infiltrate into our lives in that manner, which is different than what we're talking about. How do I get my business to appear within Google? And when is this going to happen in ChatGPT and so on? So I do think we're going to start seeing steps in that direction this year and next year. And I expect that we'll get there eventually, but we're still a ways away.
Yeah.
I want to add a final.
Okay.
Can I add a final comment to that?
Definitely.
So I think Ben's example of the price, I forget what they call it, the price checking. There's a sort of an availability and price checking experiment going on. The agents, these machines will be involved in discovery and information gathering in the near term. Like Adam's example, find me the best flights into LaGuardia under this price range, or find me a product that looks like this and costs this much, or find me somebody's availability in this time window. And sort of that discovery process and the verification of that information will be done by machines, mediating search on behalf of the consumer. And then the consumer gets presented with the information and will make choices after that. And the businesses that have their data structured properly and have that information exposed will be more likely to show up and be presented as choices. And that's where people have to really be concerned and pay attention.
Yeah.
So
I will say one last thing I want to say,
ahead.
Justin, because this is it's just comedy. It's pure comedy. It's amazing. All right. Anyway, back onto that Google business profile, the agentic getting quotes from plumbers, right? One of my customers sent me a voice, a recording of a call that came from Google from this feature. But it just so happened that my customer was also using an AI assistant. So I've got a conversation, I'll be doing a blog post on this soon, of Google agentic and the AI assistant going back and forth, having a conversation, basically. And it does say, I am a Google assistant, and it says, I am an AI assistant. Hi, how are you doing? You know, it's a barrel of laughs. It's funny as that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, actually, it did turn into a booking, which was also kind of interesting too.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Wow. Agents talking to agents. That's definitely going to be something I see coming down the pipe. You know, maybe not this year, next year, but it, you know, as this stuff gets more integrated, I think that's also the thing is like the current AI capabilities are very powerful. I think a big gap right now is just trying to find a way to connect these things. Like even if you're trying to book a flight, you can't just have your ChatGPT agent have login access to your website or to your, you know, your American Airlines login or whatever. So whenever they find a way to connect these things, I think we'll see a lot more of that. But I'd like to get back to the topic of visibility and AI visibility. We saw, and what I'd like to ask you guys about is like, what were the big challenges of 2025? And do you see those replicating in 2026, or do you see new challenges? I see we had a question in the chat for some, you know, Jason's asking like, explain, you know, why businesses with missing information are able to rank higher than competitors who do, and who do fill out all their information. Are you guys seeing, you know, what are those core challenges?
That actually, we get that with GPT all the time, and that is because Google's not actually using all of those fields from a rankings perspective. That's all. People think they do, right? But they actually don't in practice.
Yeah, it's incredible. Just to answer Jason's question, there's no such concept of syncing your business data with any of the LLMs, including Google. We run accuracy reports for tens of thousands of businesses now across the different LLMs. And, you know, on Google, which we have direct connections with for Google business profiles, multi-location business will have 100% accuracy. And on Gemini, it'll be generally between 50 and 70% accurate if you ask them to return with the name, address, phone number, hours of operation type information. Wow. So yeah, that's something I expect that to improve. I expect them to start using better data sources eventually, but for now, they're not.
Well, isn't the simple advice? I mean, this is kind of a manual thing. Isn't the simple advice in your category, do the searches and determine what the directories are that are showing up, what the sites are that's showing up, and do the legwork, whether through a system that syndicates data like you guys to certain key directories, or whether you have to do it manually.
Yeah. So Greg, we've done an analysis where we've gone upstream at the sources that are being cited. Sometimes the incorrect information will be there. A lot of the times it's hallucinations. You don't see it anywhere. Like none of the sources, all of the sources they might have correct information, or they just may not have any information at all. There's no way to tell.
You know, there was a very interesting question that somebody had earlier, and that was, I forget who it was, but it was basically about what happens about the poison pill, right? Which is where somebody has enough false information out there that it trains the AI on that information and becomes truth to somebody who does not dig deeper. And let's all be honest with ourselves. Most of us don't dig deeper. We look at the answer and we go, oh, that sounds right. That's perfect. I have seen multiple instances where you take a look at a company and you try to see in AI mode what Google actually thinks, or ChatGPT thinks about that brand by typing in the name and review or reviews. Which interestingly enough will give you different information. Anyway, but you start looking through and deep into those citations, you'll notice that there's a confusion that can occur between different brands. So especially if you have a more generic style brand, you know, like not like Birdeye, right? You know, just like maybe somebody who has a company called Reputation Management, right? Or something like that. It's generic enough where it's going to pull in information from another brand that might have horrible reviews or bad BBB or something. Yelp is key to this. So is Glassdoor. And that information will come in. And initially what in AI mode, it'll say is that watch out for this company. They have horrible reviews. No, they don't have horrible reviews. They're being conflated with another brand completely. The thing that's bad about this is that false information. What can a company do to negatively impact a competitor? And that's where the danger really comes in, is when a competitor is going behind the scenes and posting false information all over the place, maybe gets it into a place of high authority. And now all of a sudden you can't get rid of it, basically. And then it spreads and it gets worse and worse and worse. So that's another thing to watch out for too.
One of my predictions at the beginning of last year for this year was the LLMs utilizing an accurate source of truth and trying to start, like Gemini utilizing GVP or ChatGPT utilizing Bing places or whatever. And that didn't happen. I still think it's a matter of time before it has to happen, from exactly what you're saying, Ben. I mean, the amount of bad data out there when it comes to local businesses is high and growing. There's so much slop being just auto-generated and, like you said, just being recreated, and being referenced. And if you dig deep in citation lists and sources that are being utilized when these answers are being generated, yeah, you see it quite frequently.
One of the questions we had earlier, and we're I want to touch on this, but I think we could dig into it a little bit more later on the conversion side. So we see that the LLMs and these AI searches kind of conflate their sources of where they're getting their information from. But I think businesses also struggle with understanding where they're getting their traffic from. How are you guys tracking success or tracking traffic? And, are the traditional, metrics that you would use to monitor, like to basically measure whether or not you're successful, have those changed? Like, what metrics are you paying attention to? What would you encourage people to look at whenever they're trying to think about their online visibility and presence?
Ben, do you want to take this one first? You're in the weeds probably more than Greg and I when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, we've been playing around with AIO for 2 years now. We finally actually releasing our plan for it because, well, we've been able to get consistent results for almost a year now. So yay. But yes, actually, we built this package with reporting from the ground up, actually. So we figured, okay, here's what we need to report on to actually make this not an SEO, black hole, basically, right? That people are used to. And so what we've come up with loosely is reporting on what we're finding, again, kind of going back to the citations and sources. What are we finding as far as good information and bad information? Where is your brand actually winning? Meaning that your replacement is happening, at least in the instance of the search that is being done, because we all know the instances can change from person to person or day to day, just like Google search. So, but that also using GA4, you can use GA4 to absolutely figure out information. The nice thing is ChatGPT in normal results, not local results, but in normal results will have a UTM code of chatgpt.com. So that's easy. Google, not so easy. Google is moving more towards that kind of zero-click search type of system, especially when it comes to local. Although I will say AI mode and local is really killer. It's really a nice feature so far. But the attribution is horrible. So you cannot tell if a click came to you or not. The information is just like it is on search right now with the knowledge panel, where it's just the phone number, but there is no tracking whatsoever. However, in AI overviews, we have figured out a way to track that. There's a very specific hashtag that is being used and passed for the cited information. So we're able to do some reporting on that. But pretty much it comes down to brand presence, how much brand voice you have. There's some decent reporting tools now for AI search. None of them are perfect. None of them are great. And Joanna asked, what does zero click mean with Google? That basically means that somebody sees your phone number and they go ahead and they call you. You have no idea that it came from Google, actually. And the user usually doesn't even understand it.
They don't click through to a website.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah. That's the basics, about what you can figure out today. I'm hoping that it gets better, and it's going to have to get better if these answer engines want to win at the end of the day, because nobody's going to put their resources into something that they can't track.
Yeah.
Mm. So we've got a few questions here that I really want to get to. There's some good ones. One of those just being, should structured data be, and this kind of relates back to the overall theme I want to cover here is, what factors are you guys seeing that are actually impacting AI search? And so the question we have is, should structured data be a primary strategy moving into 2026? And so maybe we can take a second to kind of look at what are you guys seeing AI uses when it provides recommendations, whether it's old or accurate, but based on what you're seeing, what is AI looking at, and what should businesses be focusing on?
Can I go first on this one, gentlemen? You're right with that.
Sure.
All right. So we have been running a bunch of analyses. There's a bunch of white papers on our website. Feel free to go and find those, or I'm sure Ruchika or somebody else can paste links in there, where we are doing studies showing, looking at tens of thousands of localized prompts. So these are prompts like, tell me what the best sushi restaurant is that's open on Friday in this neighborhood, sort of things. And then we're looking at what are the sources that are being utilized when these answers are being generated. What we see is that traditional citation sources, while prominent, represent less than 5% of the total citation domains that are appearing. The overwhelming amount of citations by count as well as by percentage are coming from business websites. So what I've been telling our clients is that this is a golden opportunity for now to re-emphasize your on-page SEO, or whatever you want to call it right now. And structured data is so incredibly important. I haven't seen any correlation between schema or not schema. I think that's been overhyped. But adding additional content to your local websites, to your location pages, creating those types of tables that you see when answers are being generated. Like if you do a search on ChatGPT, it'll often create a table. Create that same table and put it on your page, and you're more likely to be cited and more likely to be made visible, and see your citation share and visibility percentages increase significantly. Same thing with question and answer formats and so on. So yeah, I think this is actually really exciting. For the first time, you're not out there begging for links or trying to go upstream and things like that. You can have a lot of fun right now just taking content you already have, reconstructing it, or having a lot of fun rolling up your sleeves and building new content.
On that point about content, I mean, Google has been saying for quite a long time, create content for humans, not for search engines. And everybody sort of rolls their eyes. But there's a lot of truth to that. And I think there's a certain kind of marketing fundamental proposition here that needs to be sort of respected, which is you need to understand your customer, understand what information they need from you to make a buying decision. Don't think about, I'm just trying to rank on Google. Think about what kinds of questions are my customers asking? What is the information they need to know about my product or service before making a buying decision, and build content around that. That is the kind of thing that people are putting natural language queries into AI. I need somebody who can I need a locksmith who can fix a particular kind of lock that has this kind of feature capability, and, like elaborate sort of longer queries. And so in that case, it's like, here are the locks that I service, and here's what you need to understand about this process or whatever. Exactly. You really need to get into your customer's mind and think about what they need to know, and create content around that, and video content as well. I mean, video is really also very important. YouTube in particular for Google is important. And so if you can answer customers' questions, don't think just about keywords, don't think about ranking, think about serving the customer and their needs. That's going to help you quite a bit.
And I have to agree with everybody here. It's pretty core to working with AI. right? And AI optimization. And, kind of like what you were talking about, Adam, going and visiting those citations for the answer that you're looking for. Now, if your brand is not in there, you need to look at those citations, and then you need to figure out, okay, and you could actually, technically, you could do this. This is a lazy way of doing it, by the way, but you could do this. You could take those citation sources, read them yourself, take those exact things, put it into Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever your favorite is, and say, okay, now write me some questions and answers that answers these questions better than what's here. You could do this, and you could make make content for your site as well. You should, by the way, and you could also do what is called chunkable content, but not in the way that Google sees it, but basically questions and answers that fall in the line of the larger context of your article itself. But again, this is good marketing. This is something you should be doing all the way. You should have been doing for years anyway, but now you need to because of AI.
I saw somebody post about duplicate content concerns. I think that there is a balance to be had there. I also find that duplicate content penalties come from really garbagey sort of content, and there's ways to condense this and create more robust pages that may have more content on them, so that you aren't just suddenly launching 5 million pages for your single city location plumber page or something like that.
Somebody just went ahead and asked a question about basically doing what's called listicles, right? And I have unfortunately been seeing a lot of these showing up.
Because somebody is recommending listicles for AI.
Exactly. It's the worst piece of advice. It is a horrible user experience. And I can guarantee you the only thing you're going to earn on that is a click that somebody dwells on your site for a half a second and they're gone, and now they're pissed. Because you just made a list because you want to put yourself at the top. This is very old AIO thinking. Old being over 2 years old, because it did work at a certain point. It does not work anymore. So please, if you're thinking about doing listicles, fire your SEO person if they are the ones who recommended it.
Although the top 10 businesses in fill in the category, fill in the location on Yelp is consistently ranks in AI results.
Ironic.
Yeah. Well, that's because Yelp has so much domain authority. They have so much authority.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So yes to press releases. Press releases have become important again.
I agree.
Yeah.
Not necessarily more, but in tandem with.
Yeah. So we've received a couple of questions on the paid side, and I wanted to touch on that real quickly. What are your thoughts currently on the page structure? I think you guys are aware of ChatGPT saying that they're going to start introducing paid ads on their lower paid and free tiers. Right now in the Google results, it feels like when you do a local search, it's ad, and then you can minimize the ads, and then you go to the the knowledge panel or the map pack, then there's another ad, and then you get to the organic results. So what are your thoughts on the current ad structure? How would you encourage people to kind of approach this side of search?
You want me to say something?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, so people have been very fixated on the impact of AI overviews on traffic, and there's been a lot of discussion about AI overviews are diminishing your click-throughs and reducing your traffic. And really what's going on is Google is jamming 10 bazillion ads into those pages, more and more ads, and that's what's really killing your traffic. It's sort of zero click because people are making choices based on GPP and ads. And, if you're in a vertical where local services ads are operating, those are sucking up a lot of clicks, and unfortunately Google is forcing people to advertise, especially if you're in local. You can't really get around it unless you're just have a strong brand and you rank number one organically, but the organic links are below the fold. So I think ads are are sucking a lot of the oxygen out of the search results, and you unfortunately are being forced to address them. I don't know if that's responsive to the question, but that's my statement on paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, paid has AI overviews have been depressing search, now for what, over a year and a half, I think it is, something like that now. And I think wasn't there one study out there, Greg? You might know this number. I think it was like a 30% drop or something, like somebody said, in organic traffic because of AI overviews, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different numbers, but it's in the the teens to 35-40% range, depending on the vertical,
Right.
depending, all of that.
The type of query is really a big part of that as well, too.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, the bigger thing I think people have to get more prepared for is, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later, and that is when, it's not an if, it's a when AI mode becomes default for search, right? And now you've got this ChatGPT type of interface that is basically how you're doing search. And then there's going to be ads in that. We all know there's got to be ads that are coming there. And I think we were talking about this actually when we were preparing for the webinar. It's like, the way you look at local inside of AI mode is it does have a knowledge panel-esque type of feel and look when you select a business. Well, guess what? That is a perfect placement where I can see 3-4 different types of ad units surrounding that data. And other rich media hanging out, say, in the left-hand side or something like that. But, we're just going to see this more and more where, yes, organic visibility is going to go down because AI visibility and ad visibility is going to go up. And if we think that ChatGPT adding ads to the bottom is where they're going to stop, incorrect and impossible. It's going to go up. It's going to go into the answers itself. It's going to go between answers. It's going to happen. So we need to all prepare for that.
That's so funny, Ben. I literally laughed out loud when I saw what it, I think they phrased it, this is what it could look like. And I was like, that's not what it's going to look like. They're not going to make money if that's how it looks.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing that they introduced that was pretty interesting. So I'm a big ad skeptic, and I don't like ads in Google, but this is the reality that we're living in. But I do think there is an opportunity to do something more interesting with ads and AI. And the ad that they presented that was pretty interesting was the chat ad, or whatever they're going to call it, where you can actually interact with the ad. Hey, hotel, do you have, this and that and the other? Do you have, laundry facilities or pool or whatever, workout room? That kind of ad is really interesting and may have a lot of success. And there's some real value there. Most of the Google ads have no additional value, or they're deceptive, or whatever. It's not particularly helpful. And I do think there's an interesting opportunity there. I mean, ChatGPT, OpenAI has to ramp up ad revenue because they're burning through billions and billions of dollars. So they have no choice. They say they're going to put guardrails around it and be ethical and be clear on what's an ad and what's not an ad. But, there's always sort of ad creep. And Google is just stuffing the SERP full of ads with impunity and blurring the distinction between ads and organic content, under the guise of sort of making things simpler for this is my editorial opinion, Ben. I see you scoffing at that.
No. I'm actually, it's got my mind spinning actually on something that might that makes a little bit of sense, and I'll just tell it to you because I'm not scoffing at you at all, Greg.
Oh, okay, all right.
I love you. Yeah, I love you. So, but seriously, so I think what I was thinking about was that on mobile, specifically with GBP, you can go ahead and you can ask AI or ask Gemini a question about a local business before you go, right? Like, do they carry this product? Are they, pet friendly, whatever the case may be. And you can delve into that. What would happen if any of the AI systems, but specifically Google, would only allow that for advertisers? So if you were just a regular business, a user cannot query this kind of information. But if you're an advertiser, you absolutely can have this feature. That's what I was kind of thinking along the lines of is basically being able to query about that entity even further and deeper into a little bit of chat after you're surfaced.
Well, that's what they're doing with ads. They're making ads a richer experience. I mean, think about how LSAs are now sort of in many ways superior to the local pack because they're at the top of the page. They look like the local pack, and they have a lot of the GBP information if you click through, or that it's indistinguishable. And they were testing I believe, removing the call feature, except in ads. And so Google is privileging ads in many, many ways, and they're going to continue to do that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're talking a lot about Google, but with ChatGPT's ads, they're going to have some sort of source of truth for local businesses. Because could you imagine a business, let's call it a multi-location business, like let's say it's a large hotel chain or something, and they're spending all this money on advertising for ChatGPT, and then you do a search for the hotel's address and it's incorrect, or their phone number is incorrect, or something along those lines. So I do think ads are going to be improved. Like I do expect some of the local results to be improved by some of the ad content in some ways, assuming they're not able to get that content better in other ways.
Yeah. So we had a couple of questions about reviews. One was about responding to reviews, and the other was if you were, for instance, if you're in the healthcare industry where you can't necessarily directly ask for them. But we do know when we do a search on ChatGPT or through AI mode for a local business, I think every single time I've searched, it feels like it's so-and-so is highly recommended or highly rated. And it feels like those reviews are such a powerful factor when it comes to what these recommendations come from. What are your thoughts on, I think in the past, the direct responses to a review haven't impacted SEO or the traditional search. You can't just stuff your response with a bunch of keywords and hope it helps you rank. But how do you see that playing when it comes to these LLMs? Are they looking at the responses? And then how would you go about generating those reviews, if you can't necessarily directly ask based on that question we had earlier?
Ben, you wanted to say something?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was going to let you guys go first. No, seriously. So in the research that I've done, and I definitely want to hear what Adam has seen, and also Greg, I have not seen review responses triggered at all within any of the LLMs. As far as the reviews themselves, absolutely. But we see it in a couple of different areas. We're seeing it on the website. It's on your owned website. B, Yelp. Huge. Glassdoor, huge. And then some data is being pulled from your GDP, absolutely. But not a ton, not like a ton of it though. It's more generalized, but the ratings are definitely being pulled.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. So when it comes to reviews and LLMs, to answer the question about responses, there's do it for CX purposes, and making sure that if people see a review, and a bad review, that you've responded to it, you absolutely still need to do this. Zero impact on LLM responses. As far as where they're pulling reviews from, Ben's spot on. We are seeing review content utilized more for sentiment sort of queries. So what's the customer service like, or who has the best customer service out of all the physical therapy clinics in my area? Then you see review content really dominating, and where they're getting that review content varies from LLM to LLM. I have seen, and I am seeing, GBP reviews appear across all LLMs. Now, here's the thing. A lot of them are old GBPs that were probably scraped before Google put a kibosh on it. I think so I absolutely have screenshots of GBP content being referenced and quoted within ChatGPT results. Okay, so it's there. Doesn't appear very often though. They're utilizing other sources more frequently than not these days.
Awesome. So we are getting close to our time, but I did want to first ask you guys, what are your predictions for this year? Adam, you mentioned some predictions you made for last year. As we go forward in 2026, or if we look at where we're going to be in 12 months from now, what do you think the state of search will look like? What will the experience be? What are your predictions for 2026? Ben, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. I'm still sticking by this one prediction, and that is that I think that things are going to accelerate enough with Google to where AI mode, I'm going to say with an 80% confidence that AI mode will become the default search. I think you'll still be able to switch back to regular search, but I think AI mode is going to become much more prominent. I also think that this year is also going to be a time where we see, again, wearables becoming more and more common, I guess you could say, especially with the advent of glasses that are coming out that are pretty sweet, pretty slick. So again, just accelerating that zero-click search.
Yeah.
I would say that there will continue to be volatility in the search world. This year, I don't agree that AI mode as it exists is going to be the new default search interface. I think the interface will continue to evolve, and AI mode will continue to get better. But I think we're going to see some hybrid interface, more AI now, moving toward more AI than what we've seen. I think consumer behavior will continue to evolve. I agree, Emily. Google is very inefficient, and I think a lot of consumers will lean on AI for discovery and to define a competitive set, and then go to Google. Our consumer research shows people will often go to AI first. That defines the competitors that people are looking at. Then they go to Google to get last mile information, contact details, directions, and so on and so forth. And I think, Google is much stronger for local, but 77% of consumers in a January survey that I just did think that local is improving in AI results. Now that includes Gemini and AI mode. Anyway, more of the same for 2025. I think, and it's a critical year for ChatGPT because Google is coming on strong.
Yeah. Adam, we have a question from Jill asking, does anyone have any tool suggestions to explore when it comes to tracking your brand's visibility in AI? And I feel like that's a perfect question to ask you.
Sure. So I spent the last 4 months heads down building such a tool within the Birdeye platform. Please get in touch with us, or feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share more about it.
Definitely. Awesome. And if you do have any predictions for 2025 to 2026, what are you thinking we'll see?
So I've already shared some of them. I think LLMs, especially if they start running ads, are going to have to become better at local business data. They're really bad at it right now, and they're going to have to become much better. I'm curious. I think one of the things that I'm curious about is how personalization starts playing in with LLM results. They're collecting so much data about us at this point. We already see so much personalization affecting results within Google, right? I'm curious. I suspect it's going to be much more so with LLMs in the future, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a 2026 thing or a 2028 thing, but I do suspect that's coming as well too.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I feel like we could keep going for another hour. There's a lot more that I would love to dig into, but we are at time. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you, Greg, Ben, and Adam for jumping in here and offering your insights. It feels like 2026 is going to be a pretty wild year. Lots of changes are coming, but I think the key takeaway is that the core foundational pieces of your SEO and your digital marketing are still those pillars, and to keep your ear to the ground for these changes, but providing that helpful content, controlling your narrative, and making sure that your data is accurate, even if the LLMs might not provide it accurately. All you can do is what you can control on your end. And there's a lot more here, but just a heads up, we will be able to you'll be getting an email about this time tomorrow with a link to the recording if you want to go back and check it out. And thank you guys so much. And be sure to register for our next webinar with Yelp. That should be a really good conversation. I'm excited to have that and ask Jim Chappelle some questions.
Jim's awesome.
But that's all. That's all we've got for you guys today. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.